Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the special school committee meeting to order. Today is September 2nd, 2020, and we are starting our meeting tonight at 7:06 p.m. Per Governor Baker's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the public will not be allowed to physically access the special school committee meeting. Members of the public can access the meeting via live stream. In addition, the events will be immediately broadcast on PBD Access TV, PBD Channel 8, on Comcast, www.pbdtv.org, as well as their Facebook and YouTube accounts. We have a couple of items on the agenda tonight, but I wanted to first start the meeting. If everybody could please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you, and please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And before we go to the items on the agenda, I wanted to turn it over to Ms. Carpenter for some comments.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of contract negotiations with Unit A and Unit B, and it is with the intent to return to open session.
Second.
Thank you. You've heard the motion by Mrs. Carpenter, seconded by Mrs. Dunn. All in favor? I expect this will be a short break,
It will.
and then we'll be coming right back out. So we'll move to adjourn for a few minutes. Okay, I'd accept a motion to return to full session out of the executive session meeting.
So moved.
Heard the motion by Mrs. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Olympio. All in favor? That's a unanimous vote. I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Carpenter for a update on that executive session meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to start off by saying, we've been in negotiations with the teachers union for the past couple of weeks regarding the pandemic and how we're going to move forward. And I want to thank them. They've been incredible. They've been very cooperative. We have reached an agreement with them, and we just met about that in closed session. And the board does have that memorandum of agreement in front of them, and we did review it. And I just want to say thank you to them. It went very smoothly, and I appreciate them. And I'm proud to be from Peabody with a union that is so cooperative and worked so well with us in the city. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to approve Unit A's Memorandum of Understanding for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Okay. You've heard the motion by Mrs. Carpenter, seconded by Mr. Olympio. We'll have a roll call vote. Any questions? We'll have a roll call vote, please, Marge.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Arnottis?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
And in the same vein, before us, you have a memorandum of agreement with Unit B, and I'd like to thank them for their cooperation during this time as well. And I'd like to make a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement before you for Unit B, which is in effect beginning August 25th, 2020.
Second.
Okay. You've heard the motion by Mrs. Carpenter, seconded by Mr. Olympio. On the motion, hearing no comments at this time, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Arnottis?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Thank you to all the members of the committee during those negotiations. And I did want to also extend my appreciation to the teachers and the administrators. We've all been under a tremendous amount of stress. This has been extremely difficult. I've heard from a number of teachers and administrators who are very pleased with the directions we're going. Others are not so pleased, have some major concerns, but I really do appreciate the teachers, the union, and the administrators working with us. I think this hasn't happened in many cities and towns, from what I've heard from others, that we've been able to kind of come together and work something out. And we're all hoping for the very best here. So I also wanted to thank all of the negotiating team here, Dr. Vidala, Dr. Lord, our negotiating team is Carpenter, Mr. Amico, Mr. Olympio, and all the members, and all the teachers and administrators. This is not an easy time for anybody, and all of us want the very best here. So I'm very pleased that we're able to come together and put this forward. So thank you all. Okay, well, let's go to the agenda, and actually, I wanted to see if there's no objection. There is one other policy I wanted to see if we could have a vote on before we go to the presentation regarding the school district health and safety measures. Dr. Vidala, can I turn it over to you? I know there's one additional policy that we were looking to vote on, so I'll turn it over to you for explanation.
Yes, thank you. So we have a policy on, it's the CTE Admissions Policy at Peabody High School. I just want to thank Dr. Lord, Mr. Magno, and Maria Ferry for their work putting this policy together. It's a great admissions policy, has been sent for approval to DESE, which they have approved. It's a really comprehensive admissions policy, and hopefully the committee has had an opportunity to review it, and we'd be looking for a vote tonight to approve this policy.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you, Dr. Vidala. Mrs. Dunn?
I'd like to make a motion to follow the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the admission policy for our CTE program at PBMHS. So moved.
Great. You've heard the motion by Mrs. Dunn for approval, seconded by Mr. Amico. Any comments or questions at this time, Mrs. Dunn?
I just want to thank all the people who worked on that admissions policy. It is very well thought out. There are a lot of pieces in this policy that now answer people's questions. It really sets a high bar for us, for our program. And I was very pleased to see it, and I want you all to know how much I appreciate that. And I think this is going to be very helpful to everyone, but especially to the CTE program, to just give it that, one more professional piece of the whole picture for the CTE program at the high school. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Any questions or comments before we go to a vote? Okay, roll call vote, please, Marge.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Arnottis?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Limpio?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Vidal, anything else that we need to touch on before we go to the health and safety plan?
Nope, I think we're ready. I think these guys are getting us all set to present.
Terrific. So, yeah, we'll turn it over to you whenever you're ready, and we'll go forward.
Thank you.
I have another to call in the morning.
Okay, I'll get started quickly, and the presentation will be up on the screen in just a moment. So, just wanted to take a moment to thank our principals for the work that they've done with the health and safety protocols. On Monday, the principals met with their staff and reviewed all the protocols and procedures. They're posted on the website, and I'll take people through them to see what that looks like. And I also want to thank our public health department, Sharon Cameron, and our nurse leader, Brenda Wolf, for their excellent presentation yesterday. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both of those presentations, and then we'll open it up for discussion and comment. So we'll start with the district-wide overview. So yesterday, the policies and procedures of the district were presented. We had the opportunity for a 9 to 11 question and answer. So it was a brief presentation and a question and answer with Brenda Wolf and Sharon Cameron. They presented extremely knowledgeable. They answered all the questions that people had. We recorded it, and we did post it on the website, as well as the presentation itself. I will say I put out a tweet about it early in the morning, and I got 3 different emails from local superintendents saying, "Can we get a copy of that? We just want to make sure that we're on the same page as you." So it was really great to know that people are watching and that they're appreciative as well. And the presentation was excellent. So the agenda included definition of COVID-19, They talked about how COVID is transmitted, signs and symptoms for people to be able to be aware of so they can make referrals to the school nurse, when an individual should seek medical attention themselves or when we should have students seek medical attention. They went through the whole policy and the procedures that the nurses will do and the public health department does in terms of case investigation and the process they use for contact tracing. And then there are some overviews of some key actions in different scenarios that there are. If someone is exhibiting symptoms and if there's an individual who's symptomatic, what the process and procedure that we should go through. And then those policies are also contained in the local school-based booklets as well, which I'll show you a couple examples of. We also have the procedures for return to school. So if someone is symptomatic or if they have tested positive, there's two different procedures that they need to go through, and we went through all of the procedures on, if someone is test positive, what the procedure is in order for them to return to school, and then if somebody is exposed to someone who is symptomatic, what they need to do, whether they need to quarantine or come back with a positive, with a negative COVID test. Then they took a break. It's always nice to have a break on the agenda. We talked about the mitigation strategies, which we've been talking a lot about as far as wearing masks, keeping social distancing, washing your hands, hand hygiene is a big one. And the big one that we haven't spent as much time on, but where we're trying to get it out there, is students not coming to school if they are sick, or employees not coming to work if they are sick. That's a huge mitigation strategy as well. They gave us some guidance on mask breaks and how to handle that, as well as the personal protective equipment. They did a little overview on how you take your mask off if you need a mask break, when it's okay to take it off to eat, or if you need to take a drink, and then I'll go back one more. And then they answered questions. They also talked about procedures for taking off gloves. It was great because the transportation department was there as well, so the monitors and the drivers also got this, and the monitors were able to ask some specific questions that related to them and get some answers. And then after that, we did a follow-up with next week, Brenda Wolf will be going to the transportation department and doing a special training just for those people. One of the things I wanted to highlight is the daily wellness checks. So this is in the slideshow, but we're asking that all employees and all parents conduct a daily wellness check, and this is just an example of it. So this will be part of our COVID parent handbook. But we're asking that everybody just does a self-check if they're coming to work, or the parents do it with their kids to make sure that they're not sending kids to school sick. So they do a self-screening that can be conducted at home, and you can also do a temperature check in order to make sure that you're well enough to go to school, or if you're well enough to go to work. And so the big piece of that is if people are sick, they should stay home. That's one of the biggest mitigation strategies in order to stop the spread. The presentation is posted on the website, so I have the link here. If you go to the Superintendents Page, on the left-hand side here, you'll see the actual video, so you can hear Brenda and Sharon talk, and you can hear the questions and the answers. And then we also have the entire slide presentation, and many of our principals were able to take direct slides from that, and there's really good information in it, and be able to use that in their presentations. In addition, each school did their own unique school entry plan. So I have sort of just a little bit of a screenshot on each school. They all did their own. Some of them look similar. Some of they collaborated, but they wanted to put their own stamp on it. So things like, and I'll go through, things like the overall health guidelines, including the protocols for the staff and students when they're sick or symptomatic. That's right at the front. So the overall health guidelines are contained in there. Building procedures in terms of one-way hallways, which stairwells they'll use, bathrooms, water fountains. All of those procedures are unique and local to each school. So each school has done a presentation for their staff, and we posted them on the school websites. So I'll show people how to get to them tonight. We have arrival and dismissal procedures at each school, which doors kids can go in. They've really made sure that they've spread kids out to try to create large congregations, and each school has their own procedures for arrival and their own procedures for dismissal. There are specific procedures in each classroom at the different levels, elementary, middle, and high school. At the elementary schools and the middle schools, there's lunch and recess procedures, and then there's a special place in the elementary ones for what the specialists will look like. We've really tried to do a good job with specialists only going to 2 buildings and being with the same cohort of students for 14 consecutive days, instead of, in the past, during the course of a week, they would teach every student in multiple buildings. And so we've really created a schedule where they'll only be with 2 to 3 grade levels in a small cohort of kids for an extended period of time. They can do more creative art lessons. So maybe kindergarten and first grade will get art for 2 straight weeks, and they'll really get some creative things. But that'll really minimize the amount of contact that our specialists have across all the buildings. And so they'll rotate through, and over the course of a trimester at the elementary level, all the elementary kids will get the same number of days of art, music, or PE or health that they would have typically in a normal trimester. It'll just look a little different, and they'll get it, in 2-week chunks. And that's just really a way for us to protect our staff and our students, so there's not so much cross-contamination. So this is just an example of the Peabody High School website. So when you go to our website and choose one of the schools, underneath the address and the phone numbers, there's a link to the reentry plan. And if you click on that, you can read through the entire reentry plan. So we made sure that all of these are up on our school website, and so I can pull them up tonight and show people what they look like. Each school has their own unique link, and it brings you to that policy or procedure, as well as on the superintendent's page, we have the opportunity to take a look at the school nurse and the Department of Public Health overview. So we have those trainings. They're public right now. People can access them at any time. In addition, the final thing that we're going to do is we're going to put out a parent handbook, so a parent COVID handbook, which will be developed by central office staff led by Dr. Lord, Sharon Cameron at DPH, our nurse leader Brenda Wolf, and our school nurses, as well as teachers and administrators. So they're going to put together a handbook for parents. It'll list all of our policies, our protocols, and as well as a frequently asked questions document. We recently put out it's just in its final stages for special education, a nice comprehensive frequently asked questions document that will be posted on our website. Our plan for the parent COVID handbook is to complete it and be able to post it on the website by Friday, September 11th. So it's about a week and a half away now. They're really working hard to get that done, and hard copies will be available when our families come in to meet the teachers on Monday, September 14th, and Tuesday, September 15th. So that's kind of a big overview. I'll stay up here so I can pull up individual, I'm sure that there'll be some discussion tonight and some questions. I can pull up individual presentations or individual handbooks so you can see exactly what that looks like. So I can go to, okay. So this is the superintendent's page. There's a link right here to the video, and you can click on the slides that Sharon Cameron presented and Brenda Wolf. And so, one of the big questions that people had is, what do we do? So, what do you do if there's a classroom that has a case? And so this is how our classrooms will be set up. If there is a student who is infected, we'll be looking for a close contact. And so if everybody's 6 feet away, okay, we would potentially be saying, were any of the folks around this student within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes? And then they would potentially have to be notified that they may need to quarantine or receive a negative COVID test. So that's a classroom example. And then there are a number of public health guidelines and isolation guidance. This is a really great slide in terms of if an individual is symptomatic, what do you do? And so if they're symptomatic, they should stay home until they get tested. And so there's different ways that you could return to school. One would be a negative test result, and that would be that they could come back to school after 24 hours. If the individual tests positive, they must remain home and seek medical attention. If the individual is not tested, they would need to self-isolate for 10 days. And so we have all of these guidelines and protocols in all of our books. So it's really comprehensive. A lot of these slides would be consistent across each of the schools, and then the unique things about which hallways to use and bathroom procedures would be unique to the individual schools. So I can show you an example of, if we go back to our home page, and we choose a school, the Brown Elementary is the first one, we'll see the individual link, and we can click on the Browns plan. And this will bring us right to the Browns plan. And so the Brown School has their overview, they have their overall health and safety guidelines, and you'll notice that this school embedded videos in to really help the kids and help the families understand what the safety protocols are. They talk about staying home when sick, they talk about different PPE, and what is great is a lot of these videos were made by the Brown School staff, and so the kids can see familiar faces, and so we wanted them to be up today so that parents could familiarize themselves with this. They could watch the videos of their teachers with their children, and their kids could get more familiarized with some of the protocols that are going on. So they have ideas for visitors, when you enter the building, what the procedures are, arrival, dismissal, and they did little videos in a number of these as well. So I just can't thank the principals and their staff enough for how comprehensive these guidelines are that they've put out and these protocols. And so they're really thoughtful. Each school did their own, and so it's really helpful for the kids to be able to see, you know, there's different pictures about, you know, what the academics will look like in terms of instruction, remote and hybrid, what the classroom setups will be, just to familiarize people with what it's going to look like, and having those photos of their actual classrooms and their teachers, just to get them a little bit more comfortable. So I'm sure there are a lot of questions. At this point, I can pause. We can go in and out of different presentations if that would be helpful for people, or I can just answer questions.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Vidala, so far. It's terrific. A lot of information. Let's open up for questions at this time. Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Vidala, I am thrilled. This is wonderful, and I'm so pleased to see it because, I'll go through them all. These are going to answer all the questions people have been coming to us with, and I am just so glad that you have that up now and that people can look at it. I'm thrilled, and just seeing how every school has a plan and it's up there, and I hope everybody who had a question is watching tonight, because this is going to really, really help the families to make their decisions about what they want to do, whether they want to go remote or hybrid, and I'm just thrilled. Thank you very much. You can tell a lot of work went into this, and I'm amazed, honestly, because this is better than anything I imagined would come, and I want you to know how much I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn, for saying that, because I know you were ready with questions, and
Oh, yeah,
I
you
know
put
you
out a
were waiting-
robocall to shut me up about soap.
and you were waiting for this meeting.
By the way, you only gave 1,700 gallons of hand sanitizer. I want to know what kind of soap we're using, too. There's a difference. But
Okay.
we'll get into that question later.
All right, any other questions at this point? Okay, we'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Vidala.
That's all I got.
That's all you got? All right.
Comment.
Oh, Dr. Lauder.
Just want to encourage people to take a look at the detailed analysis that each one of these schools put together for their plans. The COVID handbook will include, just like the student handbook, a place where parents will be signing off to be confident we've achieved a shared mutual understanding about these protocols. So just be looking out for that handbook next week, and we'll be polishing up in the coming week. So just be prepared for that, just like the regular handbook.
Great. Mr. Olympio?
Dr. Vidala, thank you so much. This is wonderful. It answers a lot of questions. My question is, and there's a parent asked me this, is let's say you have a student that has some symptoms, and and they're feeling okay, and it takes them a day or 2 or 3 to even get a test. If they wanted, if they're in the hybrid model, if they wanted to not be absent from school, could they easily, switch to remote for that period? I mean, how are absences going to, because...
So we have some guidance from the department on how to code people and how to make sure that we have the absences. But what we want to do in terms of the instruction is make sure the kids have access to instruction no matter what.
Okay,
So
yeah.
if what we want them to do, especially at the elementary level, is to stay with their teacher. So we don't want them to flip to a teacher who's fully remote. But what we would want to do is keep them in their class, continuing with the activities, having the touch points, and having access to all of that work. And so a lot of the professional development that we've done for the teachers and that we'll continue to do over the next week is, at the elementary especially, we've started thinking about Wednesday as a Monday. So typically they would launch their class on a Monday and they would have their different activities, but where Wednesday is the day that everyone has together. So Wednesday they have their full class remotely, they'll launch their lesson and they'll make sure that they're planning that out for the week. And the kids would be able to participate. If they're unable to come to school, they would still continue to get that instruction and have touch points with their teacher through like the remote access that they would be able to have. And so we'd be able to continue to have touch points more so than we've ever done before.
Okay, great. And the first day of school was Wednesday, the 16th. I'm getting questions on that.
Yes.
That's a remote day.
That is a remote day, yep.
Okay.
And so what we're hopeful of is that all the teachers will be able to meet with the individual parents on the 14th and 15th so that the kids can get met and they can talk to them about what the year is going to look like. And then on Wednesday, they'll have the entire class together for the first remote day, and then cohort A will come in on,
Gotcha.
and everybody will be getting that information tomorrow. So
Okay.
all of that information will be going out tomorrow to families, which cohort they're in, and so the cohort A will have their first day of school in person on the 17th, and cohort B will be on the 18th.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
the first day will be remote.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Olympio. Mr. Miko?
Great, thank you. Through the chair to Dr. Vidala, thank you so much. I want to commend you on all your hard work. Central office, Dr. Lord, Ms. Macarelli is here today. Marge, thank you so much for all you do during normal times, never mind now, so thank you. And to Sharon Cameron, Brenda Wolf, they're amazing. They're a small group, but they do incredible work. And this started way back when in March, May. I'm sure you can speak on it about the contact tracing and all the work the nurses did for us and public health did for the city. One of the questions I have actually came from a parent last week. And at first I was wondering what they were getting at, but it's actually a pretty good question. Has there been any talk of partnering up with one of the local hospitals, whether it's MGH North Shore or Leahy or one of the urgent care centers in the area, to offer testing to students who are going into the hybrid model on a volunteer basis, where their parents can get the results, and just to see whether or not what our percentages are going into the school year. That could help us with a possibility of not having a case in the building ahead of time.
So we can definitely look into a partnership. I do know that there are some free testing sites around. They will all be in the COVID handbook, so the parents will have access to that. We were fortunate to have school employees had access to getting tested. We tested over 300 employees, so that was a great process last week. It was a voluntary basis as well, but you know, that we were really happy with that, and that was a very successful program through Cataldo Ambulance. So we can look at what that will look like, but we do have opportunities for free testing sites. I know they have some in Lynn, Swampscott, some of the surrounding areas. So we'll put all of that in the handbook.
Great. The other thing I had was, I just wanted to, alert the public on this and our residents that I believe Peabody is the largest district out there right now that is going hybrid. I don't think anyone of our size of 6,000 students, 1,000 employees, I don't think anyone else is going hybrid at this point. So just to be patient, and we're trying our best. Everyone is trying to do the best for kids, best for teachers, and the best for our community. So I just wanted to give the public that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Miko. Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you, through the chair. Dr. Vidala, thank you for this. This is excellent. I appreciate all your hard work in every aspect of what we're going through. You've done really well, so I'm glad we hired you.
Thank you, me too.
So I have a question. Is there a specific plan listed for preschool where that may differ a lot compared to the other schools?
Yeah, so in each of the handbooks, there are some preschool slides as well. So,
There, okay.
yeah, so I can pull one up for you. So go to McCarthy. So when the McCarthy did their plan, they took into account preschool, and so they have specific things about preschool arrival, preschool dismissal, and so they have the different components for the elementary school and the preschool as they go throughout their plan, as did the Welch. So the Welch is also holds.
Great, yeah, because I knew they would be a little different.
Yeah, and so they have the learning spaces and things like that. So there's different information for our pre-K kids.
Okay, that's what I was
Yep.
just checking.
And some of the things are for the whole building.
Right.
And then there are unique things for pre-K as well.
And I just want to add, yet again, thank you to our teachers and our staff making a video, spending their time, helping the kids feel a little bit safer, just being part of that video. I'm really impressed. That was great.
They've
So,
really stepped up. They've
yeah.
done an excellent job. And these are view-only slides, but as they update them, they can update them in real time in the way that our tech department was able to put them on the website, that they'll be updated and continuously updated so that this will always be the most current information. So we put them up as slides, not as a PDF, so that the schools can then update them in real time, and they'll always have the updated information on the website.
Oh, yeah, because it changes like week to week.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. Mr. Arnottis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Vidala, and your entire team across the district for the efforts here. Clearly, everyone's trying to adapt and learn and respond and keep everyone as safe as possible. So I have a few questions. Sure. Yeah. My first one is basically when it comes to quarantining, how that will go. So let's assume when we get a case in the high school, that student, I think, is most likely going to have a sibling somewhere. And let's assume that sibling is in the Higgins or is in the elementary school. Now, yes, our students will most likely be wearing masks for most of the time if they're in person, but odds are they're not wearing masks around their home. So it's reasonable to assume that if one sibling gets it, the other is going to get it because they're living in a house together. So are we going to be kind of chasing that? If you know of a student at the high school who has it, are we going to then be following it to their siblings' class and class at the Higgins or at one of our elementary schools? Is there a plan for that, basically a contact tracing plan in place to go?
Yes, and so it's a very important distinction between who the close contacts are. So, for example, if a student tests positive at the high school and their sibling is a close contact, the sibling would then have to quarantine. But the people the sibling has been around would not have to quarantine unless the sibling tests positive as well. So okay. What we would typically do is the sibling would either quarantine for 10 days or have a COVID test. And if they tested negative, they could come back to school, and it's not an issue. So there isn't a third-party issue unless both people test positive. So, the Department of Public Health, they do the contact tracing,
yeah.
And so they would make sure that once there is a positive test, they make sure who was within close contact of that student and their family, and then the family would have an opportunity to get tested as well, and then we would see when does it end, basically, and the goal is to contain it to the individual. And there's been cases where an individual has contracted COVID, but the siblings have not, and they're able to isolate in the home. And there's a whole thing around isolation guidance and quarantine guidance and the slight idiosyncrasies and what the differences are. So when you need to isolate at your home, you should stay away from your family members and things like that, versus quarantining, which is a little bit different. So Sharon and Brenda did a great job on that, but they're right on top of it in terms of who the family members are. But just because someone at the high school tests positive doesn't mean that the sibling's elementary classroom is impacted unless that student tests positive.
So is it safe to say then that if you have one student in a family in the district who ultimately tests positive, is it the expectation that any other student who lives in a household with them would also have to have a positive test, or a negative test to return to the building?
If they're a close contact, yeah, that would be the expectation. And so we would default to the Department of Public Health, but that's what they did in the spring. They did an unbelievable job with the contact tracing, and so they would, as soon as there's a positive test, we go directly to them and say, this is the situation. They get as much information as they can, and they get all the guidance. And they're always, I mean, we have such a great relationship with them, and they're just, at the other end of the phone anytime I need to call them.
Great.
And so they would really guide us through that entire process and really just continue to inform. And they ask the right questions. You know, who's in the house, who have you been around, where have you gone, you know, what duration, and so it's a really thoughtful process about how they're going to handle it.
Great, thank you. I know, Mrs. Dunn, if I can continue.
Please.
I know Mrs. Dunn had pointed out we had something like 66 kids who had ultimately tested positive in the city at one point. Are we, and it didn't sound like we were, it sounded like the parents are required to do screenings. Are we not screening students in any capacity when they come into the building? Because I don't know if all are, Ms. Carpenter, you might know, but I believe some daycares are screening before the kids even come in. So are we doing that at all?
The guidance we've gotten is not to do temperature checks beforehand. So we're relying on families to do their daily check, and then if a student comes into the building and is symptomatic, then our nurses would step in. But we're not doing taking temperature checks of everybody every day. We've got the guidance not to do so. There's just too many false negatives and false positives that it's not reliable enough to try to test, to take temperatures of 400 or 500 kids at a time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I know we're talking about regular cleanings. How regular are the cleanings going to be in the classrooms? Who's doing them? And then I think a big question is the cleanliness of the bathrooms and the capacity. And I did see one slide that was up for a second. I think it might have been the Higgins presentation that had talked about cohorts in the bathrooms. But are those going to be cleaned every X amount of hours or every half an hour? How is that being done? What's that going to look like? Because I think that's a point of concern, the bathrooms especially. Because actually, not to go off on a separate tangent, but I know in normal times we've talked about the huge vaping issue that we have in the building, and I don't think that's just going to disappear because COVID is around. That tends to be a little bit of an addiction, using a vape and putting that out into the air. And I know the bathrooms were an issue where that was happening. So I think that's going to be a little bit of a concern.
Yeah, and I think, again, not to go off on a tangent, but I know that vaping has been, a big thing that we're just learning about in terms of trying to get as much education out there to kids as possible. I do know that there are going to be studies, and there have some that have already been conducted around the adverse effects of people who have vaped or who are regular vapors, the impact on their lungs, and then COVID-19 really is a devastating disease for people whose lungs are compromised. So, I think that is, something that, not that fear is always a good thing to do, but I think that is, one of the things that in terms of the education on vaping that is important. But to your question, we're limiting the number of kids in each bathroom. So, for example, at different elementary schools, only certain grades will use certain bathrooms. This is the Higgins slide that you referenced. Only 2 clusters per bathroom. So, where there are 5 clusters per grade, they've really worked out the grades so that they're really limiting the number of kids that are going in and out of the bathrooms. And then within our COVID handbook, we'll put in sort of the daily check that the custodians will be doing every day in terms of cleaning, and there'll be a checklist of what they do every day. We'll also have at different levels, so at the pre-K and kindergarten, where the students are changing midday, there's an hour in between, and so we've worked it out with our paraprofessionals that they'll wipe down every desk in between. And so, we have comprehensive cleaning guidelines as well. When the summer programs ended, we misted we had the foggers, and we did I'm losing the exact terminology of it, but
Disinfecting.
the disinfecting spray, basically, in all of our buildings. We did that on the weekend of August 17th, and we'll be doing that again the weekend of September 11th, prior to students arriving. And then we'll do that on a monthly basis. And typically they say it's good for 6 weeks, but we'll be doing that monthly in addition to the daily cleaning that we'll be doing in all of our buildings.
So it's one cleaning initially a day? Is it before? I would think it's before school. I'm just thinking high frequency areas, door handles, things like
Right.
that.
Yeah, they'll be ongoing throughout the day with the custodians. So we'll put together that, and we'll have it for the September 11th, what that check looks like in terms of how often things are happening. And we'll be finding creative ways to make sure that all the high touch points are wiped down multiple times. And I don't know exactly what the time frame is, but we'll have that spelled out so that it'll be in the handbook.
And then I think another subject that I know when we had our high school folks here, I know that was kind of a question at the time. What does social distancing look like when you're going from class to class, from place to place? How is that going to work in our buildings when the hallways are a certain size?
Yeah, and so the hallways at the high school are greater than 6 feet wide, so we know that. So we're going to try to get kids on each side, and very similar to the way that the graduation procession worked. That we're going to be asking kids to be 6 feet apart. We know that we're going to need more time in between classes than typically. I know they usually have like 3 minutes to get to class, and kids are hustling across the building. We know that we're going to need longer times to get places, but that is all incorporated into their plans.
And the mask breaks, so they'll be escorted outside for a mask break and then brought back in, is that?
Yeah, so mask breaks will be in every building's plan. So at the elementary level, classrooms or grade levels can go to large spaces like the library or the gym. Preferably we'll go outside when weather permits. And they'll do it on a smaller basis. At the high school, they have more of a larger plan, using all the different exits that they have and assigning kids on where to go. The goal is to get kids outside, to spread them out so that they can take their masks off, and then put them back on safely and get them back into the building. So I think that the high school has a plan in the middle of their day to be able to do that. And then the elementaries are rotating through who's going to do it. And then the Higgins also has their plan for mask breaks.
Okay. And I know there was some concern brought to us by folks at the high school regarding ventilation. And I'm wondering where we are on that and what that looks like, what we're doing. Because I know there's a question of basically the level of filter that you use, and I'm just curious as to where we're, because it's an aged building, so.
Yes, and so the high school has a couple different models because there is HVAC with the heating and cooling in some of the locations, and they have some univents in the other ones. And so our understanding is that the MERV 13 filter has been discussed quite a bit. The fans that are required for that level of filter, because they're thicker, it takes longer to get the air through them. It would ruin our univents. And so, it's not recommended that we use MERV 13 filters in our univent systems. But what we did is we tested the air quality in all of them, and we made sure that every univent is working. And we have all the classrooms that have working windows. We walked through all of them with the union, and so we felt as though it's safe to return. We made sure we checked different points in each building, saying that, okay, if this was a new classroom that was built, and we make sure that maybe that's not a room that we're going to be putting kids in right now, and we'll put kids in a different location. So we looked at all of our spots in all of our buildings, and we worked with the union very closely. They were great about it. Our facilities people were phenomenal, and so we felt like we were at a place where we can safely return the kids to school.
Have we thought about adding in hand sanitizing stations in any of the buildings?
There were discussions about that. There was some concern about the stand-up units and getting things on the floor and ruining the floors. So we had basically decided to put hand sanitizer in every classroom, and so we have gallons and gallons, thousands of gallons of hand sanitizer, and so every classroom's been outfitted with refillable hand sanitizing, like just little bottles, and so every classroom will have those, and kids can have hand sanitizer on the way in and the way out.
Okay, thank you. I'll hold off for now, but thank you for that, Dr. Vidal.
Thank you, Mr. Arnottis. Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Vidala. I know the amount of hard work that you, your leadership team, principals, teachers, staff members, members of the community, members of the public health department have put into this, and I appreciate it. And I know I'm critical, and I'm critical about a lot of things, and I think that that's just part of our function, is to check and balance, have a check and balance with each other. That criticism is not, should not be construed as a lack of appreciation. Like I said, I know how hard you work, and I appreciate it. I know how hard the people on your reopening task force have worked, and I appreciate that. I know how hard teachers and staff members are working to put this all in play, and on top of that, make our students feel as comfortable as possible, and our student families feel as comfortable as possible with the a lot of uncertainty and a lot of dramatic change that they're going to see and experience when they return to school. I just want to point out that when we began the conversation of reopening, I think the positive test rate in Peabody was 1.79%. And then there was a slight increase, and it went up to about, at some point in its most recent peak, about 2.4% or somewhere around there. I think in Governor Baker's weekly color-coded map, which I despise, I think it pits community against community, and it's really an awful way of conveying information, my opinion. But at least the information that we're getting is that the state level of positive test rates for COVID is now below 1%, and Peabody's, as of I think this morning or this afternoon when the announcement came out, is at 1.95%. And we've been trending gradually downward, I think now for 3 or 4 consecutive weeks. So I just want to put that out there that, I think at 1.79%, there were more people in this room who might have been more comfortable with a full in-person learning experience. We're approaching that. And I hope that we continue to approach that. And I'm happy to see that we have plans in place that are going to protect students, that are going to protect staff, that are going to protect citizens of Peabody, siblings, as Mr. Onotis has pointed out, and other family members. That's fantastic, and you've done a great job doing that. I just want to quell some of the anxiety and apprehension that is occurring in living rooms across the city, not just tonight during our meetings, but on a regular basis, that we have flattened the curve. We have gotten to a point in Peabody where we're now again below 2% positive test rates. The data that we get, or at least that I see, from the governor or the executive branch, doesn't break that down as to who those positive test results are for. And I think Mr. Olympio had pointed out at a prior meeting that we do have a significant number of senior housing in Peabody, and we certainly have experienced too much fatality in that population. And so I just wanted to at least give a little bit of the science that's out there and the most recent science that we can get. And I do also want to thank Ms. Wolf and Ms. Cameron, who are always available. I've called Ms. Cameron several times in the last few months over a variety of COVID-related issues, including food programs and food service and schools and reopening and other things. And boy, she's always responsive, always gets back to me within an hour, and I just wanted to publicly thank her for all the work that she's done, as well as Ms. Wolf. I know that she's been working hard with our nursing staff, and they're a tremendous group of professionals who are extremely valuable and we're lucky to have.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. Any other comments, questions for Dr. Vidala? Mrs. Carpenter?
So 2 questions. And I'm not sure if it's for Dr. Vidala or the board, or if anybody's thought of it. Are we still renting out our facilities to any outside groups in the evening or the weekends? I don't think.
At this point, no.
We're not?
No.
Okay.
We've been getting requests for field usage and parks, but
Nothing
But
inside?
nothing in school.
Not gyms or auditoriums or things like that.
And we're not going to be doing that right now?
Not at this point. I mean, I think, once we get started, we can revisit it, but at this point, we said, only to our own personnel at this point.
And another question, although not health-related, I think a lot of the parents out there are asking kind of like when they're going to find out everything, when they're going to find out their groups, the remote learner, like when are they going to start getting all those, the buses, everything like that?
Yep.
Yeah. So tomorrow is the big day for, everyone will know their cohort tomorrow. And then I think elementary schools will be getting emails from their teachers, directly from their teachers, so they'll learn who their classroom teacher is tomorrow, which is always an exciting day. The middle school will get their cohort tomorrow, and then on Monday and Tuesday, they'll have their full schedules available. The parent portal the access needs to be on for them in order to do that. And then the high school has, the cohorts are A through K and L through Z, and they'll be getting their schedules next week as well.
Okay. And I know the buses, I know we just started with buses, so when do you think?
I was there today, I actually went to Berry Street, and Lisa Connors had all of the applications. They're starting to print out the bus passes for kids, and we will be the first week of school, we'll be making sure that the kids are able to get on even if they don't have their bus pass. But so those should be going out next week as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. I'm sure we're getting all
Yeah.
of those again questions, so that's great to hear. Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question that, I thought this was a really very good idea. We have a pool of substitutes. I know, we're trying to hire substitutes, and could we give them some of this PD so that they're prepared when they go into the schools to handle, different procedures, or just to be able to, know the protocol for the, how to
Did
put the
Dr.
mask
Lord
on.
ask you to ask that question?
Oh, you have a plan.
We travel on the
was a
same
plan.
channel.
I think that was a plan. He had suggested that weeks ago, and so we have a date on the calendar where they'll be getting this
He's
type
a
of training.
brilliant man, that's why.
Great minds think alike, yes.
But yeah,
Yes,
that
it
came,
is an excellent idea. The other thing we're going to do with our subs is really try to assign them to really just 1 to 2 buildings, instead of having them go, so we're working with Doreen Blaisdell, who schedules our subs, to make sure that they're really just dedicated to smaller areas instead of going across the city. And just making sure that we thoughtfully do that so that, again, we're protecting our substitutes as well.
Right.
Dr. Lord, you want to jump in?
Yeah, and also to complement that, the FKO team and the YMCA team, who have people that are already involved, they need to learn how to access our Chromebooks, how to work with Google Classroom. They've been invited to be part of some of these trainings our teachers are offering. So when the kids are in non-school days and their parents aren't there, and they'll be working with an FKO team, they'll be able to have someone who has a general idea of what's going on in the classroom. And again, also hopefully within 2 weeks, all the teachers will have I'll say a parent-friendly curriculum map, K-12, all classes, so they'll have a general idea of what's going on in all the classrooms on the non-day. So hopefully we'll put that together and get that out there. We're talking about that this coming week.
that's good. I think that's really a good idea, because so many people still are thinking that they're going back to normal. And this is going to be very different. I mean, you could see it from the pictures. Never did I think I would see the cafeteria at the Higgins covered with desks. It really is going to be a different experience for everyone. So the more information that you can give them now, I think that's really good. And I appreciate that. I have another question. It's about the buses. The bus rule that came out from the DESC about, they have to leave the windows down and the roof vents, even in the rain. And the question is, A, do people realize that? And B, we have, 3 runs. So if it's raining and you've got your first run and the seats are clean, because they have to be cleaned after each group of students. So you're going to start out with a clean seat. Go to pick up the next run of students, those seats are already soaked. By the 3rd run, has the Board of Health looked at that? Because I know that ruling came out of Department of Ed. And I don't know, I couldn't answer it, but there is a health concern there of, cleaning those seats, trying to dry them off, trying to run on time. And has anybody looked into that yet?
So I know there were some questions from Transportation Department around, what if it's not feasible to roll the windows down for whatever reason? Maybe it's on a special education transport bus or for another reason. So Brenda's answer to that, Brenda Wolf's answer, was put the windows down if it's appropriate, and if not, if the windows have to be up, then you take extra precautions. And so I think, I haven't seen the guidance that they should be open in the rain, but I think that we do have a plan that between every run, everything's getting wiped down. So they wouldn't be that the third run is dirtier than the first run, because the idea is that they're wiped down after every single run.
And another question about the bus riding. If you have a student on the bus that refuses to wear their mask, the bus driver, I mean, they have to drive the bus. That's the biggest consideration. How will we handle the student on the bus that doesn't wear their mask? Would that be something, is there something already in place where a bus driver, I know they have to report anything that happens on a bus, would they still follow that procedure, and then the principal would be the one who deals with that child?
Yeah, so in general, students without a mask should not get on the bus. And so if a student was on the bus with a mask and then took the mask off,
Right.
we would ask them to report it to the principal, and it would be a disciplinary type situation. If a student removes their mask on the bus and then, exits the bus, they wouldn't be allowed in school without a mask on. So, we would expect that the transportation department would work closely with the school administration, because the school administration knows the families, knows the kids, and they'll be taking it. So we had a number of those questions around graduation. What would happen if people took their masks off? And people took it very seriously, and I think that, we're in a different place. We think that kids are going to be mischievous and, acting out, but I think, the kids are taking this seriously. They want to be back in school as well. We'll have some isolated cases, but I think for the most part, people are going to follow the rules.
Okay, thank you. It's just a bit off topic, Mr. Mayor. This evening, we had a Quality and Standards Subcommittee meeting. We're still working on the face covering policy, and implemented a lot of the language that was given to us from Sharon Cameron, on behalf of the public health. And in that policy, and we're still working on it, but I know we've got a deadline now because we've got to get it in for that handbook, so you can put it online next Friday. The thing is, one of the questions that came up during the discussion, and this is why I bring it up now, was because of a policy of what we would do with people, not just students, staff, families, who refuse to follow the policies. What type of a discipline would we utilize, going forward if someone does, take the mask off on the bus ride and then puts it back on? I'm thinking if you have something in place already to detail that's great. It may be in the slides or in the handbook, but if not, I do think we need to have a very specific policy with the, with the rules that, if you don't wear a mask, you can't come into the building. But if you're already in the building and you refuse, well, what are we going to do with you? Are we going to send you home? Or are they going to go in the isolation room? That type of a procedure. So if it's already taken care of, thank you. But if not, then we do need to address it before that handbook is printed.
Yeah, and I think many of those will be handled on a case-by-case basis. And I think it's, for example, the bus, if you don't follow the bus rules, then you might be prohibited from riding the bus. So, all of those policies are already in place, and this is just an additional rule that'll be in place, that you're required to wear a mask. And so we'll follow a lot of the same things that we've always done when people don't follow the rules. We still have our original student handbook and our original bus policies. We'll continue to do that. And so if people aren't wearing a mask, they're not allowed to enter. If they take it off while they're in, then they'll need to be removed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Mr. Amico?
Thank you. Through the chair to actually the committee, I may have a question or two for Dr. Vidala. I just want to say that Peabody's a city of about over 50,000 people. We all know that, and it's a city, but most of the times it feels like a town. If you know 50 people, you probably know 5,000. So I'm just going to urge the public to really, we need an all hands on deck here. Help out. Not everyone can follow the rules. Not everyone, it's not a refusal. It's just that maybe they can't. What we've seen in this pandemic is it's a classes system. Education, and COVID has created this as well. We just need everyone to help out. There's going to be child care issues. If you see a parent or a grandparent or someone struggling, reach out to that parent. We do that anyhow, and that's what makes this community a great community, is the ability for people to help others. But we're going to need it more than ever 10 days from now. And also, if there's anyone struggling or if anyone needs anything, please reach out to Dr. Vidala's office through the mayor's office, and we'll try to do the best we can as a city to assist people. The food insecurity issues, between Citizens Inn and the schools, we've done an incredible job. So basically, just help out any way you can, and reach out to us if you need anything. And if we could, through the chair, Mayor and Dr. Vidal, if we could make that a point, and I know we already have, but maybe put that out there. If anyone is struggling, anyone needs assistance of any kind, there are no guarantees, but we can certainly listen and hopefully help out whenever we can. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Miko. Well said. Any other comments, questions for Dr. Vidala? Mrs. Dunn?
It's just one that kind of follow up with what Mr. Miko said and also with what Mr. Hockman said. I think that people need to understand that even though the numbers are low right now, this is nothing to be treated lightly. All of these protections are being put into place in the hopes of providing a safe environment for students and staff and families. But we also have to recognize that this is still a very serious condition, that what we're doing is very different than the regular educational program. We're all doing the best we can, but people do need to take that responsibility to be careful, to be aware. We've all read the story about the wedding in Maine. One person ended up dying, and they're showing the progression of that one event. Right now, schools aren't open. Everybody's been separated. It's been a real boon if you look at what the doctors at Boston Children's have said, because just regular childhood diseases are way down because everyone has been staying apart and socially distant. So going back to school is going to be a different experience on many levels. And as Mr. Miko said, being able to help, being able to be understanding, work with everybody, understand that these are being put in place for a very specific reason, not just to have rules and regulations, but to make sure that everyone is healthy. I had someone call me and they said, how many deaths are acceptable to you? I said, none. And they said, well, you need to think about that, and I have, and I know we all have too, and that's what's important here, that we're making sure that we're doing everything possible that the doctors and the medical personnel and the scientists have given us to this point, and that this is all designed to protect people, but we also need them to follow through on it, because if they don't, the whole system is jeopardized. So, thank you, and I think you've done a wonderful job preparing us. You've done a lot of work on this, really.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. Arnottis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think my colleagues have hit the nail on the head there. We're in this, we're all in this together. I've erred on the side of caution completely throughout this, but I do think it's very important that people are patient as we go into this, that they are calm as we adapt to this in our buildings. I think that's very important, that our staff and plenty of our students are going to experience something that's unusual and out of the norm. And I will say, yes, our percentage is lower than it was in March, but I do think a large part of that is because we're wearing, masks, and we're not near anyone, and we're not congregating with hundreds of people in buildings. So I think that has a part to do with it, and I wonder, reversing that, what effect that will have. But I'm not going to rehash that here tonight. But I do hope that people are just wary and stay responsible. We all want to be done with this. We all want to be through this. But we, as Mr. Miko pointed out, we are a very sizable district that is going through this. So I do think people are going to look at us and watch what happens here. And I hope that it is successful. I hope it leads us on a path of being able to come back fully in person. I don't know if it will. I'm cautious with all this. There's a lot to figure out, and Dr. Vidala, I'm not going to put another task on you that, because there's about 1,000,001, but one of my major concerns was always, as I was very clear about, if we have to go fully remote, those families who would have now opted to come in person in some capacity, what will happen to those folks, and I know we could never guarantee childcare to anyone, but I do hope there is some potential to work on a plan where, if there's really someone out there, and I think there will be, that if we have to go remote in some way, that there's something we can do for them so that they're not left in the lurch in some way. I'm not going to make a motion. I'm not going to make, a big to-do, but I hope that's something that is in the back of the mind of the district so that folks are going to be ready if that happens, because it does concern me. And I do, while we're on that, does everyone who, might need a hotspot or a Chromebook, has that been taken care of? Where are we on that right now?
So on the 14th and 15th, we'll be distributing Chromebooks and hotspots to anybody who needs them. So we have good news, bad news on the Chromebook front. The good news is everybody's going to get a Chromebook. The bad news is that they're back ordered. So we're expecting our tablets to be in the second or third week of September. So K and 1 will get their devices second or third week of September, and we're looking at October for the delivery of the rest of the devices. So what we'll do is anyone who needs a Chromebook, we have multiple Chromebook carts that we're currently inventorying and getting ready for the 14th and 15th, and anyone who needs a device at home will get one on that day, as well as we have the 150 hotspots. So on the first day when they come in to meet, anyone who doesn't have a Chromebook at home will be prioritized, and they will get one. We gave out 500 during the spring, but we have close to 1,000 devices that we can give out that are close to end of life, but functioning, and then they probably have a good year left on them. So that will get us through until all the new devices come in, and by October we're anticipating that every student will have a new device.
Okay.
So
thank you.
But it's on our radar.
I hope so. I think that's something that
Yeah. So we'll prioritize the families that need them first, and then we'll make sure that everybody gets a new device by October.
Great. Thank you. I think that wraps up what I have to say, but I do want to hammer home the point that this is a community effort that we're about to go into, and I hope we're all thinking of others primarily when, I think when this crisis is going on, we kind of focus on our own backyard, and we're going into this where you kind of have to think about other people's situation, not just your own, frankly. So I hope we're all thinking of others as we go through this, and that's where I am right now. So thank you, and I'm good.
Thank you, Mr. Arnoutis. Anybody else at this time? Questions? Mr. Hockman?
Yeah, just on a couple of points that have come up during the conversation. Dr. Vidala, with the information you just provided us regarding Chromebooks and tablets, I think you said tablets for the younger kids, are we going to have a priority of students that have elected to go remote completely in terms of getting whatever inventory that we have now?
Yeah, so we'll prioritize anybody that doesn't have one. So everyone will be remote on Wednesdays, so we don't want to limit it to just the fully remote. And we do anticipate that anyone who does not have a device, and we want to prioritize one device per student, not one per family. So I know in the spring we started off as one per family, and given the way that instruction is going to happen, it needs to be one per student. So we'll prioritize, and any student that needs one, we will be able to provide one for that.
Yeah, and families that do have devices that they're able to use at least on a temporary basis should make those devices available to those students so that they can begin their school year in a proper fashion and not take a device away from someone who might be in a family that might not have any devices at all.
And the 500 devices that we gave out, those are still with the students unless they've withdrawn from school or moved. They would have returned it. But those students already have them, and so we'll continue they'll keep those devices, and anyone who needs a device, if they got one for the family and they have 3 kids, we'll provide one for every student.
Right. Had a lot of questions on the rising 6th graders and the rising 9th graders who usually get a new Chromebook. They're keeping their current Chromebook. They're also part of that back order, but they'll get a new set also, the rising 9 and rising 6 in October.
So the rising 9 and 6 graders will get a new Chromebook when they come in
Correct.
October, and will recover the Chromebook that they previously used.
It'll be the rising 9th. The rising 6th or 5th graders, they're a little different story.
Right.
The rising 6th graders will probably get one of the group of stuff that we have on hand, those ones that are got a year or two left in them.
And on this same subject, will we have any Chromebooks available at the Y or at the FKO sites in the event that a student doesn't bring their device with them on days that they're there? Similar to what we do at the schools, we always have a few loaners available.
We can look into that.
Okay.
Look into that.
Yep.
Sure. The kids should bring it with them. It's like taking your pencil to, well, I mean, I know what you're saying.
Should.
And just, I think, two other points. I think this is the only item that's on our agenda tonight. So, one, this is tangentially related to this, but we do have grab and goes that are continuing. There's one tomorrow, and Dr. Vidal, if you can, I think the high school is 10:30 to 12:30, and the Higgins and the Welch are from 11 to 1. Is that
Is it 10:45 to 12:45?
Yes, you're right, 10:45 to 12:45. We did get some fantastic news from the federal government in that there will be no charge for any student who receives breakfast or lunch through the school district through the end of this calendar year. That was extended, I think, yesterday. So that's fantastic news in a lot of ways. One, it makes food available to anyone who shows up for the grab and goes or who is in school and receives a breakfast or lunch through the process that is being developed for delivery at each school, and it's going to look different at each school. It also makes the process a lot easier for our staff in trying to recover funds from a student who might be going wholly remote and picking up their food at a grab-and-go type location, but wasn't eligible for free or reduced lunch. So it gives time for the food services department to develop some sort of point-of-sale system that might not be at that, the sale might not be at that point. It may be at a remote location. So that was fantastic news that came down from the federal government. And on a completely separate note, and by the way, not only is there a grab and go tomorrow at those times, but there will be one on Tuesday next week?
Tuesday the 8th.
Tuesday the 8th.
Yep, and then the Thursday the, is it the 10th?
Was it no, it was Thursday the 12th or Friday the 13th, I forget. But certainly tomorrow and Tuesday there will be grab and goes at those three sites.
And they're going to do it on Monday the 14th.
Monday the 14th, right, that's what it was, okay. And lastly, and this is not related to this subject at all, we currently have a budget meeting, I think, scheduled for next Tuesday. If it would be okay with the rest of the committee, is it possible to move that from Tuesday the 8th to Wednesday the 9th?
I won't be able to.
You're not able to?
I can't, no, I'm sorry, I have another school committee meeting on the 9th.
Or even Thursday the 10th, perhaps?
Can't do Thursday.
Okay. Okay. Tuesday the 8th it is.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up, make sure that we had our schedule set. Before we go to that, though, any additional questions or anything for Dr. Vidala on this presentation? Or all right, we'll close this. Oh,
Just want to suggest the district calendar will be posted on the website within the next day or two. If you want to
get that tomorrow.
So folks should be aware of that. The start times and end times for kindergarten, pre-K will be a little bit different. And anyway, there's a lot of information out there that will be pretty obvious. We have to change the cohort days on 3-day weekends and so forth. So just be mindful of that for your family calendars.
thank you. Mr. Arnottis?
Just quickly, and this isn't more on safety. Dr. Vidal, what was the final breakdown of percentage of coming back versus remote learning? What was the final choice breakdown? If you have it, if you don't, that's okay. I'm just curious.
So I went through today with elementary school. I think we had 417 elementary out of about 6,000. I'm sorry, about 2,800. The high school, I think, was at about 20%, and the middle school has one cluster per grade. Mm-hmm. So they have 5 clusters. So it's about 20% as well. So we're right around 80-20.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so schedule. We are for meeting Tuesday, September 8th, and that's just lined up for a budget meeting. Mr. Hockman, does it help to move the time at all, or?
No, it's fine.
Yeah, I think we're okay.
Okay.
I did also want to announce tonight that we do have a athletics and wellness subcommittee meeting that will be posted for 6 p.m., I think, Doc, next Tuesday, September 8th as well. And the main subject for that agenda, for that meeting, will be fall sports.
Okay. So we'll have, we have that meeting on for 6, the regular meeting on for 7, the regular budget meeting on for 7 that evening. And then our next regular meeting is set up for
15th.
15th, Tuesday the 15th, and then we'll get right back into that regular schedule on the Tuesdays, second and fourth Tuesdays of the month. Okay.
And I'll schedule quality standards at the same time. It's different members on those two subcommittees, as far as I know. And then, because we do need to get our
for the,
policy.
yes.
in.
All right, excellent.
Question.
Yes,
Will that,
Mrs. Carpenter.
sorry, through the chair, will that subcommittee meeting about the sports, fall sports, be televised?
Yeah, so through the chair, I did ask in the notice that we, the subcommittee members, meet live in person with, I think, a few invited guests, and that we asked if Tech and PATV can broadcast just as they're broadcasting this, with an opportunity for public participation.
Yeah. It's worked out for quality standards. That's what we have done. So
Okay.
it works out.
I just thought there'd be an interest. I wanted to know if people could watch.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Or we can tell them your cell number and all questions come through you.
I can give more.
All right, so everybody's good with the schedule going forward. Thank you for a very positive meeting. Thank you, Dr. Vidal, Dr. Lord, for your work.
Motion
All right,
to
move
adjourn.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.